Hello. Hi, Judy. Hello,
Hi.
world. We are excited to be here today as we kind of walk into or step into our live all about generations and the future of work. Would love to just ask our regular question. I ask this every time I go live. What is making work awesome for you this week? Or what are you doing to make work awesome? So, if you are here live with us, or even if you're watching a replay, type in the chat what's making work awesome for you this week, and we will get started with some introductions. So, hello, everyone. I'm Pam Ross. I'm the founder of Blue Rebel Works. Our mission is to improve people's lives by making work awesome because we spend far too much time at work for it to suck. So, we do that through leadership development, culture development, and team coaching, all with a focus on measurable behavior change. And what is making work awesome for me this week is being here with my friend Judi, getting to dive into her white paper and share all of this great research with you. So, Judi, tell the
Hi.
world about yourself.
Hi. Thanks so much, Pam. Thanks for joining us today, guys. So my name is Judi Samuels. I am an experienced strategist, likely from birth. Everything that I have done in my career, in my part-time work, in my younger life, has been around building experiences for people everywhere, inside and outside of an organization. And over the course of the past decade or so, I've really been focusing in more closely on employee experience. I'm the founder of Generations Experience Strategy and Design. And the statement we make is it's a little like yours, Pam. We want to make work awesome, not just for today, but for generations to come. And so that is really kind of the impetus of what we'll talk about today.
Amazing. And Judi and I have known each other for many, many years. We met
Mhm.
on Twitter when it was a wonderful place to be. And we have collaborated on things. I have so much respect for the way you think about things and how you approach business and the world. So I'm excited to dive in with you today.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So, we are going to be talking about generations in the workplace and what that means for leaders. And so, as we get started, I'll ask the audience if you are here live or again in the comments later, tell us what generation are you from? I
Mhm.
think Judi and I are probably the same generation.
Probably so. I'm a
We
proud Gen Xer. Not everybody likes to hear that, but I am about as middle of the line of a Gen Xer as you can possibly get. And,
yeah.
you know, Breakfast Club all the way.
Yeah, I have to say, I am a Gen Xer, and I feel like I really relate to Gen Y, though. Like, there's so many
Okay.
times when I do feel like, oh gosh, like yeah, I can relate to many of the things that and some of them are stereotypes. So I am looking forward to hearing from you, Judi, based on the real research, and what they're telling you about work, what they're really like, because I
Yeah.
do feel some kinship with them, but who knows?
Yeah.
So tell us what generation you are from if you are here live on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and we are going to dive in. So,
Sure.
Judi, You
Yeah,
conducted some in-depth research on with surveys of hundreds of people. You did in-depth
we
interviews.
did.
You consulted with therapists
We
and
did.
psychologists, all to understand the generational experience and how we
Yes.
can create success for all generations in the workplace.
Yeah.
And so I have known, like I said, known you for years. I know you were
Yeah.
working on customer experience, employee
Yes.
experience, all around the experience. What led you ultimately to this focus on generations? Why did that become important?
Well, by kind of originally in the start of my career, my first real job, I worked for the federal government. I like to pretend that it wasn't really because I worked for crown corporations in the tourism world, but it was the federal government. And so in comes this probably very stereotypical Gen Xer who graduated from a marketing school. So we all know we're all going to rule the world. Like that was kind of the way we were wired. And I walk into baby boomers and some traditionalists who are leading me.
Mhm.
Um, and I was the youngest person in the office, and I was pretty good at what I did. And then I got older and I moved to Toronto and I worked for agencies where I was one of the older people in the office, and everybody coming in were millennials and now Gen Z. And it's such a different way of working. And I'm realizing that we need to understand, we talk about diversity in a million different ways. And I want to be really clear. Going through talking about diversity from an age perspective does not discount all the other ways of looking at diversity, but it is an additional layer and it is one that is not thought of often. We just expect that you're going to come in and be a career person like everybody else is a career person, and there should be no nuances in that other than maybe the traditional ways of looking at diversity. So I became really interested in these different age cohorts, the way they work, the way they tick, the perceptions they bring in, and and how that impacts what they do at work. And by the way, if anyone's listening and they're on the flip side of this, where they're looking at customer experience, it also impacts your customer.
Mhm.
So a couple of years back, Deloitte informed the world that in 2025 we would be dealing with 5 generational cohorts in the workplace. It is 2025. It is happening. COVID took everybody for a spin. Gen Zs are very different. So, again, I want to be clear too. This isn't new work. Other folks have kind of dived into it a little bit, but this gives us a bit of a new lens on how different generations work and how they can work best together.
That's why I love it, because I know I've brought in interns at different times, and I've worked with some probably Gen Z or kind of on the cusp Gen Yers. And I have to say, sometimes it's been challenging, and I'm a little surprised at some of the things that happen. And so I am looking forward to you helping to bust some of the myths a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe, and help like old people like me, old Gen Xers like me, on how to lead this new generation really, really successfully. Because I have found that they are coming in with different experience,
Yep.
even from myself when I was that age. Obviously,
Yep.
technology is totally different. Like you said, COVID was in this sort of like pivotal time for them as they're developing. So they are coming in this different kind of from this different perspective. So, what challenges did you find that leaders are really facing when it comes to this kind of, and I loved how you called it a generational mosaic
Yeah.
of 5 generations in the workplace. And if you are here live, I'm going to pop that question up for you, because we would love to hear from you. What are
Okay.
the challenges that you have found in when it comes to different generations in the workplace? And I'm just seeing, hello, Vanessa. I see. Yes. Yay, Breakfast Club. We also love that.
Yep.
Yes. So, what challenges are you finding when it comes to generations in the workplace? So, Judi, what did the research
Yeah.
say show you? And if you're here live, tell us what you're finding.
Yeah, you bet. So, first of all, let's just kind of set the stage. Generations are given a kind of cohort year range based on what has happened to them in their life during their most influential time. Traditionally, that's viewed the teenage years, between 13 and 17 years of age. Something occurred, likely traumatic, possibly dramatic, sometimes catastrophic, and it changes your lens of how you view the world. And that's not just about the things that happen at home with your mom and dad and or your mom and mom or your dad and dad, but it just changes everything you're looking at. So if I think about my father who's a traditionalist, for him, kind of at the tail end of his high school, JFK. Um, he was born just after World War II. I go back to my grandparents, and they're not with us anymore, but they went through something different as well. Um, the baby boomers, we're talking about Vietnam. We're talking about the rise of the 80s and the early crash in the 90s of the economy. So these types of things change our lens in the world. And for some younger Gen Xers, 9/11 started to mark millennials and Gen Xers, right? And so I will ask a question and take a beat before I keep going. Think about your Gen Z. Think about their ages of 13 to 17 years old. What happened?
Do you want me to answer? Can I take a wild
You
guess?
can go for it.
Well, certainly pandemic.
Bingo.
And I would also say, like, I don't know how, I mean, social media has become extreme, like the TikTok kind of
Yeah.
social media. Like it's quite social media, even though social media has been around for a while now, the kind of social media and the especially image based or video
Yeah.
based and like
Yeah.
appearance and like that sort of
Yes.
social
Yeah.
media, I think also probably has an impact.
100%. So what you have in the most malleable time of Gen Z is they're locked down and they have pictures, and social media is the only social interaction they have.
Mhm.
So, in a time when traditionally human beings are developing independence, the willingness and acceptance of failure, the resilience of fall down, get back up, the rebellious nature of I don't want to listen to my mom and to my parents, and I want to push and I want to try things, they're locked down. They can't even go to school, and they're faced with this screen that protects them. They can say and do anything. There's no consequence, and so they come out of this and end up in the workforce with Gen X, baby boomers, older millennials. And we're all expecting that you're going to be an 18, 19, 20-year-old coming into the workforce working the way we did when we were 18, 19, or 20. But the reality is that your brain is actually not developed to that level yet. And it's not a knock on Gen Z, but the frontal cortex develops during those years. And it didn't the way that we would have said traditional humanity would develop. It's all going to
Mhm.
change now, anyways.
Mhm.
But now we're expecting these 18, 19, 20-year-olds to be the way we were, and they're behaving the way we were behaving when we were 14, 15, 16. And so that's one of the biggest challenges right now. We're seeing Gen Z coming into the workforce. They're getting let go before they hit their 90-day probationary time. They're getting discouraged. They're feeling hopeless. They don't understand. They have a very different work ethic. Well, I never had to take accountability. I never had to take initiative. I never had to fail, confess to the failure, and then do better, right?
Mhm.
This is all stuff that we as Gen Xers especially, but all the other generations have had to do a lot of, and Gen Z just hasn't done that. So there's this really tough love kind of way of getting them into the workforce and getting them to know the kind of work ethic that everyone's expecting. And on the flip side of that, you've got traditionalists who've all but retired. There are still some in the workforce. Baby boomers who are retiring as I speak to you, Gen Xers who are mad at the man and leaving for entrepreneurialism. 94% of businesses in the United States that have been started as entrepreneurs were started by Gen Xers. And
Wow,
and it is because they do not believe in corporate structures.
Mhm.
and they do not like it, and they feel like they've been slighted by it. So now you have millennials who have a particular work ethic, who are feeling the pressure from everywhere in the world, with Gen Zs who are coming in who don't understand what work ethic means in the corporate world.
Right.
So communication rifts, perception rifts, expectation rifts abound everywhere. So if you're saying what's the worst thing that's happening right now because of this, we just don't understand why someone's coming in with a different lens of work. Oh, you've been hired, you should work. There's your computer, there's your desk. See you
Mhm.
at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I even think about I taught a semester at college. It's something maybe I'll go back to when I have more time in the future. But and I remember giving them a collaborative project to work on. They had to write a collaborative kind of case study together. And when I got their case studies, it was, like, partly just not really well written. Now, this was before ChatGPT or anything, so maybe they would have more help with that now. But so partly, like, parts weren't very well written. It was totally not cohesive. Um, and so in our kind of recap of the case study um, class, it ended up not being about HR, which was what I was teaching at the time. The whole class turned out to talk about how do we collaborate with people and what does that look like in the workplace.
Yeah.
And like all they had done was go like, okay, which topic are you doing? And then they just submitted all their papers and someone put it in. And there was no collaboration at all. And I was like, oh, like people need to be taught that. And I don't know
Yes.
why, but when I came into the workplace, it just was collaborative. I don't know how I learned that, but maybe it is this, like, because they're behind the screen and they're not with people, and especially, I mean, this is gonna be even worse now because that was before COVID.
Yep.
Um, this kind of, yeah, the not understanding what work with others looks like or what
Yeah.
others' expectations are of us.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
when so a lot, I mean, Pam, you know this. Work is human. And it doesn't matter if your space is technology. On one side of the screen is a human being, and on the other side of the screen is a human being. And so as leaders and managers, somewhere along the way, we forgot that the entire human being comes to work. Like you don't forget who you were at 8:59 a.m. and then remember at 4:59 p.m. You are. And Gen X especially, but and I'm speaking, tongue in cheek. I know millennials did this too. I know baby boomers did this too. We played when you were at home in the summer. I'm saying in the summer in Canada. If you're from the United States, you might have played a little longer, but it gets pretty cold. But you played outside. And so you ask about collaboration. Sun up to sundown, we were on our bikes with our friends outside playing, making things up, creating sand castles, going to the local pool. Like we collaborated. What do we want to do together? How do we want to do it? Are we all going to dress up in some form of way for Halloween? Are we all going to do so? Just we were forced to
Right.
because our parents said go outside and play. They locked the door and they didn't unlock the door until the lights came on at night. Whereas today, and I'm the mom of a Gen Alpha, she's starting to have some of her own independence, but it's a really different world. And I remember when we started talking about, don't go talking to the person in the white van. And so it became all of a sudden you didn't want kids to go outside and play. And so
Mhm.
collaboration didn't just naturally happen. And while some video games are online and collaborative, I've heard kids play collaboratively online. They're yelling at each other. They're
Right.
saying and using different types of language with each other. So collaboration doesn't look the way it did. And we just naturally learned it because we were put into very human social interactions from a very, very early age.
Mhm.
And so we get to bring that to work. This new cohort did not have that.
Yeah.
And one of the things we heard with when we worked, spoke to some VPs and CEOs, is we're not their parents. It's not our job to raise them. They should just know,
Mhm.
which to a degree is true. But if you want your business to be sustained, you're going to have to find a way to coach in a bit of a different way, because they need to be brought up to do
Right.
that. And without being, condescended to, and without being downplayed to.
Mhm.
So it's a struggle.
Yeah, for sure. There's some great comments here.
Yeah,
Um, Steve's comment made me start
true.
singing that every generation blames the one before. Um,
Yes,
every
yes.
generation feels the next generation is not as prepared or dedicated. Right,
And they
except for
and
the
they
baby boomers, because Gen X was totally prepared or
Totally.
dedicated.
And
I'm
and
just
let's
kidding.
face it, the generations before us have destroyed the world too, right? So you've got both sides of the
Right.
coin, right? The next generation isn't ready, and the generation before us screwed everything up, so we have to fix it,
Yeah.
right? Gen X believes that. I know millennials believe that, and there's no doubt everybody after us will believe it too. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right, Steve. So these, you talk about unconscious bias, like it's right there.
Yeah. And Vanessa had shared communication challenges.
Yeah,
So some,
huge.
maybe an older leader really liking phone calls, younger person wanting text exchanges, and like all of those expectations. And I know that was one of the key findings was these communication
Yep.
challenges across generations. So can you tell us a little bit about what you found what people were saying about that?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, which is interesting, we always say it's technology, and it is kind of due to technology, but it's language, right? Uh,
Mm,
right?
more about that, yeah.
Yeah, so Gen Z in particular, but millennials as well, and Alpha is going to be a whole new group. We're going to need new dictionaries. They are using terms that like mean
Yeah,
something completely different to me.
yeah.
And to many of us, and they use it in the way they speak, and um you're seeing it kind of come up in commercials as well.
Mhm,
um right at the tail end of Gen X and into millennials, and people will, my daughter who's an alpha will say, "Oh mom, you're about to get cringe." I am
mhm.
using these terms that don't kind of resonate. do, I would like to think that many of the listeners here remember the word fat, PHAT,
Right.
right? PHAT meant good.
Yeah.
Fat doesn't mean good to me,
Yeah.
right? But PHAT meant good. And people, and then all these acronyms, people signing off their emails with TLDR,
Mhm.
too long, didn't read.
Yeah.
TLDR. So Tom Lewis, like I'm looking for somebody's initials,
Right.
right? And if there is a Tom Lewis, I apologize. But so these things are coming up, and when a Gen Z or a millennial are using these acronyms to get quicker, to become more efficient, the technology only allows X number of characters, not this many more characters. um, then you're sending that to a baby boomer who's going, "What are you saying to
You're
me?"
right.
Because I don't understand the language. So it's language and platform. And I can tell this wasn't written by you. How did you do it? Well, I did it on AI. Oh,
Mhm,
well, hold on. You're not supposed to do that. Well, why not?
mhm.
Right? I don't understand why can't I? And there are ways to use AI. So they're using different platforms, they're using different technology, and because of the isolation they felt, they find human interaction very, very intimidating.
Mhm.
So a great example is you're going to the mall with your Gen Z child who is trying on pants that they really want, and they're trying on a size medium. They need a size small. You're busy with the other child saying, "Well, if you need a size small, just go ask the associate." "Oh
Right.
no, that's too scary. Well, let's just leave. We're not going to buy the pants. I don't need them. They're fine. It's too scary to ask." So literally they will walk out and not purchase because they're too afraid to ask for another size.
Right.
Human interaction is scary. So imagine what that feels like at work when you have to talk to your boss
Right.
or get a performance review.
Right. I'm thinking of feedback,
Yeah.
um, one of the key things that we teach is like coaching and feedback. And I'm just imagining this next generation, and I've seen this, like when you have to give them feedback, like just like and our style of feedback is to ask about it, like, hey, like tell me about what you think went well here, tell me about what you think you could improve on. And just like I imagine deer in headlights, sort of like, how, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to say to this, and how do I respond? So yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine that.
Yeah, it is such a difficult concept. And we've talked about this a little bit too in millennials started this concept of everybody gets a ribbon, right? When I had track
Right.
and field day in elementary school, there were top 3.
Yeah.
Eventually it became top 6. And now everybody gets a ribbon because you showed up for the day and ate a
Participated.
hot
Yeah.
dog. And not that eating a hot dog's a bad thing, but there's a reason for track and field day, and that's not it. And so friendly competition doesn't
Mhm.
exist.
Do you
Challenging
think
yourself.
that this will mean the end of, like, I am definitely like type A personality, like, um things need to be done well, like really
Yeah.
like constantly striving for how can it be better, that sort of thing. Like, will, and it's not always healthy, I realize that. So maybe that some of this, is this a good thing, that maybe not necessarily lowering standards, but less strive for perfection from that perspective. Although I would almost see it differently, because they're seeing perfect on social media. Like, what does that even mean? Trying to make
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, there's a balance to be had, right? What
Mhm,
you're seeing as perfect on social media, we all know is often doctored, and we talk about catfish, and we talk about all kinds of different things that we know isn't real. And so, um, my humble opinion is that those who are still prepared to push themselves and challenge and do something unique and out of off the beaten track and authentic will do better than others.
mhm,
It reminds me of the video from Pink Floyd The Wall, where everybody's walking in one direction but one person's going this way, and that person is the one that in the storyline is right.
mhm.
um so I think there's a balance to be had, and it's not all bad. It's not all bad.
Right.
We have come a long way. There's a different way of cheering at each other on. There's a different way of connecting, and not we don't judge on harshly on some of the things we used to, which caused a lot of problems in personal behavior and mental health. And so it's not all bad,
Mhm.
but it's still going to require people to stand out.
Right.
um, I don't want to put a thesis on this right now, but I would recommend a book to everyone who's listening called The Fourth Turning. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that concept, but it essentially talks about 4 cycles in humanity that just keep repeating themselves. And we're in between the third and the fourth, which talks to this, we first of all, we're all apathetic, and then it is like forming, norming, storming, and performing, right? We're
Mhm,
all apathetic. We're kind of starting to come together. We argue because we're fighting each other on whose rules are right and whose rules are wrong. And then we come together and we find a way to make it work. That's where we're at, where we're looking for that way for all the generations to come together and really make it work. And when we do, we will perform again. We
mhm,
are in a stage right now, businesses across the board, forget political landscapes, forget economic realities.
mhm.
We are struggling to perform. We are
Right.
struggling to be at our best. And it is because there is so much noise. We need
Mhm,
to find the right people to come together and start shifting that. And a lot of it has to do with a lot of that has to do with generations coming together and taking the best from each other.
mhm. I had Vanessa's comment up here about that rift and how it gets bigger, but what I'm hearing is, yeah, we're at that stage right now,
Yep.
and we're starting to see, like, people are realizing there's this need to come together to understand more,
Yep.
and to kind of get rid of that rift.
We have to be open. We have to be open-minded to ask the right questions. Steve, I love this. That's good. Did
Nice.
you hit the ball, Steve?
Participation trophies. Okay. Now, when we think about closing that rift, I know
Yeah.
you also in your white paper talk about strengths
Yeah.
across generations. So, what strengths have you found in specific generational workers across the different generations?
Okay. So I absolutely love this discussion because we kind of stop talking about how good the other generation is and we all like to point fingers. I will say a little anecdote and then I'll share all the strengths. One of the verbal kind of uh, ad-libbed comment that was provided to us in the survey, I laughed when I read this, obviously from someone who's an older baby boomer. And he said, if I hear one more person call me, say, hey, boomer, I will stand out of your way and let you walk off the cliff into the shark pit below and laugh. So that is that is where he was at. He was
Yeah.
just done with being called a boomer. Um, Baby boomers provide us with a lot of great experience. They are your corporate memory, stability, mentorship, industry expertise that you're not going to have when you've only been there for 5 years,
Yeah.
right? Um, Gen X, we were taught to be pragmatic, a little stoic. We can handle the winds of change. That's what we were made to do. And we can do it on our own and we can do it in a team.
Mhm.
So we've got some pretty good versatility there. And we do have some good deep industry experience as well, but traditionally we're going to be more of a I can be an independent worker. I can pull people in when I want. I have the ability to go find the right skills and talents. Millennials are the epitome of teamwork.
Mhm.
Teamwork makes the dream work, and
Interesting. Yeah.
they love working in collaboration. They were when they came into the workplace, we broke down the cubicle walls, right? We used to have the group tables where everybody could bring in their laptops and sit down and play music, and so they have this ability to make work fun and make work a little bit more awesome. And it was tough for baby boomers to deal with that, but over time, you kind of understood this like real camaraderie, which created genuine teams inside the office as opposed to groups or
Mhm.
departments.
Yeah.
And Gen Z is so technologically advanced, they can flow through computers and programs in ways that candidly most older generations can't. They don't always know why they're doing it. And
Mhm.
so they each have their strengths. If you find the most open minded people in all of those, you are going to genuinely have an incredible team. Take that deep industry knowledge from a baby boomer and that ability to translate it into very efficient, properly summarized AI script, but done in the right way that the Gen Z could program. All of a sudden, you have a really cool way to do knowledge transfer, which, by the
Mhm.
way, a lot of organizations struggle on.
Right.
So, how do we find those particular strengths and bring them together?
Yeah. I love it sounds like such a great opportunity for like, I remember when I was in the corporate world, we would talk a lot about cross mentoring or, mentoring across departments, levels,
Yeah,
generations,
yeah.
and that opportunity is so huge. Now, do you find that this newer generation is open to that kind of mentoring? Because I did hear a lot about millennials being quite open and
Yes,
interested in
yes.
learning from older generations. What do you think about Gen?
So, millennials want to grow. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to challenge, they want to be the ones who create the next version of the world.
Mhm.
And they might. I don't know if they will or they won't, but they might. And they definitely have that desire and that capability and the smarts. And remember, Gen Z finds human interaction intimidating. So, feedback, mentorship, opportunities to have live conversations to grow, it's very uncomfortable.
Mhm. But they need to do it, right? Or am I
100%
do
they
I need
need
to
to do it.
challenge that? Like,
No, they do
yeah.
need to do it. And the question becomes how. And it is a lot of patience. Maybe they're not 1 hour one-to-ones. Maybe they're 15-minute clips.
Mhm.
Maybe they're
Mm.
not the 2 hour performance review. Maybe you now need to unpack it over the course of the last 30 days in a calendar year. Little bits and pieces is far more tolerable than sitting down for an hour in a meeting room with a closed door in front of someone who's in front of a computer screen. Like it's Man, that is
Right.
uncomfortable. It is stressful. It is affecting my mental health. I need a day off after this. And I say again, I say it tongue in cheek. I know some of us are probably giggling as I say this, but it is a truth. And so we are going to need to build a level of tolerance and patience we did not need to before.
Mhm.
And we need to help them understand that it's for good intention and it is to help. It is for belief in your potential. And boy, that sounds, parent-like, it sounds teacher-like, but we as leaders, we're just another version of a teacher, and we have to accept that role, and keep growing from there. So, yes, they need it, but it is difficult and it has to be done differently.
Yeah. I love that idea of, yeah, the 15-minute chunks of when one-to-ones or spacing out your performance review. Let's talk about this objective on this day and maybe
Yeah.
another one another day. That's a great, like, actionable tip that I can imagine really, really being effective. And just from Vanessa, great examples of tolerance and patience. I also saw this great comment from Steve around activities, parks and rec activities, and introducing that activity.
Yep.
Um, it sparked something for me totally unrelated, but I was just listening to, I think it was from the New York Times about, no, it was actually a Toronto podcast, I think, about walk with the doc. They're doing this
Okay.
in Oakville because health information has not been really readily available, or there's a lot of misinformation. So doctors are starting to do this walk with the doc kind of, so they go for a walk in a park,
Yep.
and bring that, it's totally aside, but I just thought it was like a brilliant, there's so many brilliant things happening. If you don't get stuck in the doom scrolling there,
Yeah,
lots
yeah.
of great
Well,
things
and
happening.
it is, yeah, and it's important to enlighten yourselves in a variety of ways around what mental health is and what it really looks like, and Gen Z isn't ever gonna. Well, I'm gonna say they're not ever going to. That's not true. They're not just willingly gonna come in and say, "I need a mental health day." They're
Right.
probably just gonna say, "I need to go home," and we
Yeah.
don't know why,
Yeah.
right? When we spoke to the psychotherapists in this paper, again, we make fun of things and we do things tongue in cheek, and that's okay. But I do feel bad to a large degree. This is a group of people, of human beings who have become a bit hopeless. They have grown up in a world where, at the time when they should be independent, they've been locked down. And when they came
Mhm.
out of lockdown, there was an economic challenge, and they don't have as much money as they thought they did. They don't
Mhm.
have as much freedom as they thought they did. Their parents have indebted themselves for a variety of reasons. Um, and they're like, I'd like to own a home, but I probably never will. I'm not even sure if I can move out of my parents' basement. Rent is so high. I want to drive a car, but have you seen the price of gas? And everything's electric, but I can't plug into anything. So everything I want to do has a challenge to it.
Mhm.
So while I might want to go to work and grow,
Mhm.
why?
Yeah. One of
Like,
the things I do hear a stereotype about, and I don't know if this is Gen Z necessarily or Gen Y or what, but about lack of resilience in
mhm.
younger generations.
Yes,
Did your research
yes.
turn out yeah, say more about
Yes, 100, very, very much so.
that. Mhm.
Um, it is millennials to a degree, but millennials are in older in life are learning resilience.
Mhm.
Again, tongue in cheek, and I am not going to stand on my Gen X soapbox and say this is the best generation, because it's not.
This generation.
We've done a lot of things wrong, and we probably will continue to do it. But resilience, we had to learn early. Our parents weren't always there. We fell off our bicycle. No one picked us up. We got bullied. Things happened and we just had to figure it out. Baby boomers were told to suck it up. We were told figure it out. You
Right.
don't have to suck it up, but you solve it. I don't have time for this because I need to go do these things. Millennials and Gen Z were supported a lot more. Support is great, but we've become a group of parents who want to protect for all the right reasons, but maybe a bit sometimes too much.
Hmm.
And then we've created these children who are very sensitive,
Hmm.
who, when they're told no or that's wrong, start to cry
Hmm.
rather than how can I do it better? And crying is okay. Like, if this is a really sensitive conversation because you don't want to say that emotions are wrong, they're not. You
Hmm.
don't want to say that you shouldn't support your children, you should. But we also need to allow our children and allow the next generation and allow our employees to fall and get back up, to learn how to fix a mistake, to learn how to grow and the value in doing so for yourself.
Hmm. And the persistence. This
Yeah.
is, I would say, probably the biggest challenge I've had when bringing in, and I would say the people I've brought in were kind of on the cusp of Y, like leaning into Z as a Canadian. Um,
Yes.
and the biggest thing was that persistence to solve a problem.
Yes.
When they butt up against a challenge, it wasn't like, oh, let me try another way, or
Hmm.
let me do some research and figure this out. It was either just leave it and don't get it done and wait until I ask and then say, yeah, it didn't work or I couldn't figure it out, or just write away a question to me on how to do something. And so like that is honestly, that has driven me crazy. And I go ahead and hey boomer me, but like I I that drives me crazy.
So Pam, did you play video games when you were younger? Any
Yes,
video
all
games?
the time. I
Right?
still do.
Okay. Do you remember when you had to just kind of figure out how to get through the level?
Yes. And
Yeah.
you know what? My sister, who's younger than me, wants to do the walkthrough. And I'm like, no, do not look at the walkthrough. We can figure this out.
Bingo.
Right? Yeah.
So now you were talking about resilience. How do I solve the problem? Well, I go on YouTube or I
Right.
go on AI or I go on, that's just how I solve the problem.
Yeah.
So when the problem's in front of me and there's no tools for me to solve it, then it's probably not important. I don't care about it. I'm going to move on. And I'm not saying everybody plays video games, but again, these are the technologies from those generational cohorts that have trained you in a particular way.
Hmm.
We have a co-op student that we've brought in, Gen Z, and I literally spent a week building templates that are step by step
Right.
instructions. And I'll let you know how it goes. This is a bit of a lab test.
Experiment. Yeah.
I've built 3 templates, step by step instructions. The other ones are skipping steps. And I want to get to the end of the co-op where there are less steps. Practice resilience,
Hmm.
practice problem solving.
Hmm.
So allow them to first of all understand what are all the granular questions, and that means a lot of work for you as a leader.
Hmm.
But maybe you only have to do that 2 or 3 times, and then you can start omitting, and then by the end of 3, 4, 5 months, they should be going, oh, you didn't ask that question. Maybe I should ask that question.
Hmm.
That's my hope. That's my
Yeah.
hope. But
Yeah.
it's a bit of a Pavlov's dog theory, and you start to
Hmm.
build it up. So again, it changes the way management works,
Yeah.
to build these new types of onboarding tools that are granular to like
Right.
right down to the comma.
Yeah, I know I'm currently hiring, looking for a learning coordinator, part-time role, anyone? Um, and I actually have got hundreds and hundreds of applications, so I'm good. But I'm thinking, and as I'm looking through the applications, a lot of them may be in one of these Gen Z
Yeah.
or a younger Gen Y, and as I'm kind of filling in the role right now, I'm recording screenshots of me doing screen recordings of me doing
Yes.
everything. And I'm typing out step by step how to do it because I do anticipate that being a challenge. There's so many systems to learn. So it sounds like hopefully I'm on the right track there. The other thing that's standing out to me is this, like the psychological safety that's needed, and how
Yes.
do we, um, like really make that explicit that I expect you to make mistakes. Like
Yes.
if
And
you're
it's
not making
okay.
mistakes, then I'm gonna be like, what's going on? And it's
Yeah.
totally cool. Like we all make mistakes. I'm really trying to ingrain that in them and make it safe to like
Yeah.
try. And yeah, like there's nothing that you're gonna break that's gonna be beyond fixable. And like, how do we really help them understand that if they haven't had that
Yeah.
opportunity to fail?
Yeah.
In the past, and be okay with it, like making sure that we as leaders really are
Yeah.
okay. Like what's the
Yes.
border of like this kind of mistake is okay and
Yep.
this kind isn't. um yeah, I'm thinking about how do I make those kinds of guardrails really really
And it's got to be clear. If it's not
mhm,
clear, they're not doing it. Um, the output, when we say, well, what's my expectation? What's my output? You can't just say it's a report,
mhm,
right? Like, I don't know what a
yeah,
report is. Yeah, sure.
yeah,
Here's 3 sentences. That's my report.
yeah,
So we really, really need to be a lot clearer in our communication, a lot more granular, and then finding the balance between being granular but not condescending.
mhm.
So it's a tough
And
call for sure.
hopefully that's the beginning, because as they get like learn into the role or grow into
Sure.
the role, that will change. Because like I
Yeah.
really love to work. We work really autonomously, right?
Yeah.
And so I really believe in like here's the outcome we want, like and outcome, not even like a report is this, but like we need to be able to make the decision on what technology we're going to purchase based on your report. um like so you can figure out what your report format is, but it should help us make that decision. So how, like that's where I'd like to get to,
I
is
know.
like here's what a great done looks like, and
I know.
why that is, rather than the specifics of the how.
So maybe I'm helping you problem solve here, but I mean, really what you need to do, maybe even if you don't put the structure of the report together, is to say, when I make my decision, these are the 6 questions I'm going to ask myself. So your report
Mm,
needs to include those 6 questions, but they don't know the 6 questions. They've never had to do it. Mom and
yeah,
dad made decisions.
yeah.
So yeah,
Mm.
how is Judy different than her boss 30 years ago? Steve, I worked for a lovely gentleman at the federal government 30 years ago who told me that if I didn't do what he wanted me to do, he was going to throw a stapler at my head. So I would really like to
I hope
believe,
you're different. Knowing you, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, there was no patience, there was no tolerance, and
The
I
kinds of
was,
things that were okay or
yeah,
tolerated in the
yeah,
workplace, like it's hard to imagine that those kinds of things happened,
yep. Okay.
often back
Now, this
then,
was a lovely gentleman who called every woman honey, sweetheart, whatever.
of
And
course.
he was just a few minutes from his being packaged out by the federal government. It was all the stereotypes that you wanted at the time. It was perfect.
Yeah.
But I say that, I say that as a joke, Steve. I think the biggest difference, I think the biggest difference for myself and for many of my colleagues and folks in Gen X cohort, or others in leadership roles, is we are more open to having this conversation.
Mhm.
We know there are differences. We know those differences cause challenges. And we know that if we can harness the strengths in the differences, we're going to do even better than what we did 30 years ago, and then what some of our competitors are doing, and so on and so forth. So I think it's the ability to have this conversation and the willingness to say, I don't know everything. How do I learn, and what do I need to ask?
Mhm. Hmm. Um, I'm noticing the time, and I want to wrap
Yeah.
up within the next 10 minutes, but I have two really important questions.
Yeah.
Okay. And asking audience, if you are here live or even in the chat later, what questions do you have for Judi about this generational experience and managing, leading the 5 generations? So I want to translate into Blue Rebel language, which is what makes
Yeah.
work awesome, right? What makes work awesome for each generation? If you could really TLDR it for us.
Yeah. 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 So baby boomers, especially traditionalists, are all but retired. That doesn't mean we should discount them, but traditionalists and baby boomers are going to have some similarities in terms of what they want. I'm going to say it in a weird way, respect your elders. That does not mean that you need to bow down to everything they say and do, but they have a font of knowledge on an industry, on a career path, on life experience that we cannot fathom.
Hmm.
Survival for them was making it through the war. We never had to do that. Respect it. So we need to really demonstrate that we respect what they're bringing, that we want to maybe unpack it, ask some
Hmm.
questions, really understand where it's coming from. The more you understand where it's coming from, the more you can take it and run with it in a way that might now work for your generation.
Yeah, I have
Um,
to say, having my father lived with me over the pandemic, and just me asking, like when he would say something like, "Oh, back in my day," blah blah, blah. And my normal response was, "Yeah, yeah, whatever, dad." But what I like learned really fast, because I wanted to build a relationship with him, was to ask, like, just,
yes.
yeah, like, tell me more about that. What was that like?
What was
And
that
oh
like?
my goodness, the stories,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
yeah, it's but how much that built our relationship rather than just the kind of tension
Yes.
between our viewpoints. So,
And you will do that at work as well. Ask the
mhm,
questions, understand, get to know. If it takes you an extra minute, take an extra minute. It's worth it.
mhm,
Gen X, we are the independent, autonomous worker. Do not dictate to us. Do not micromanage us. Do not hold our hand. Please get out of the way. And also respect that we come in with a good amount of experience and knowledge as well. But we need to be open minded and safe to also ask questions to keep learning. We don't know everything yet,
mhm,
and we're okay with that. So for Gen X, it's about give and take, it's about autonomy, it's about ability to get to be the truly, genuinely the expert in my field, which is why a
mhm,
lot of them have left to start their own businesses.
right.
For millennials, they're your next group of leaders. They want to be your next group of
Mhm.
leaders. Help them become leaders.
So growth.
Anybody can learn to do math.
Mhm,
Not everybody can learn to become a leader, and that's where they need help, especially because they are going to be leading Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming in.
mhm,
So what does leadership look like? How can they be leaders in their own way, in
mhm,
their own authentic human way? So that stuff is very important. And that's really what they're going to be seeking, right? Don't necessarily, I mean, yes, you can work on the skill and the product that they're working on, but that's not where they want to spend the bulk of their time.
mhm,
And with Gen Z, we talked a lot about it. Make work awesome for them. Make it fun. Make it give them a variety. They have played video games. They have been on Snapchat. Everything lasts 2 seconds. They do not want to sit down for an hour, but they still want to know that someday they're going to make a real paycheck. So
mhm,
it's building them up. 15-minute clips for a feedback session instead of an hour. A unpacked performance review. Um, you know, you're going to write a report. It's 7 sections long. 3 questions for the first section. Let's talk about it. 5 questions for the next section. Let's talk about it. Break it apart. Give them pieces, and they'll start to be more confident. That's what they want. They need to build that confidence and the
mhm.
resilience that they can build it.
Okay, awesome. So I'm hearing like respect, experience, ask me about my experience generation or the baby boomers, autonomy, freedom. I totally resonate with Gen X, Gen Y. Oh, I should have taken notes. Gen
Teach
Y.
me to lead.
Yes, right. Teach me to lead. And then the fun, the shorts,
Yes.
the TikTok version
Yes.
of
How do
everything.
you TikTok leadership? There you
Right.
go.
TikTokize it. Okay. Now, if you could, you've given a ton of great tips, but what would you say, like, kind of top three tips for leaders as we think of whether it's all five or whether that we need to be
Yeah.
focusing on Gen Z right now?
Tip number one, know your employee population. Do you even know how many are from each of the generations?
Hmm.
Start there. That's
Hmm.
tip number one. Um, tip number 2, understand their language. Um,
Mhm.
once you know how many people in each cohort, understand how they're speaking. And if you want to, I mean, I don't know what tone of voice your internal brand has, but go ahead and build a glossary of terms and have fun with it, right? These people say sigma, these people say fat, these people say something else. It all means the same thing. Here you go. And that's okay. Have some fun with it. Just
Yeah.
recognize it and have some fun with it. And the third one is a Judi opinion, not sponsored by anybody out there, but I would say pair up where you can the most open minded Gen X and the most open minded Gen Z. And the reason I say that is they are both lost generations. They are the smallest generations. They are the ones that people have ignored. They are the ones that people make fun of for a variety of different
Mhm.
ways. So they're going to experience similar judgments, even if they don't think the same. So if you can find someone from each of those generations, you can have a great leader, you can have a great innovator, and they can come together and really help each other. And that'll start to permeate your organization.
Mm, that is great. Now, I know you have an assessment that can
We
help
do.
leaders to prioritize. Give us the TLDR on that. I'll
TLDR.
just mention that I have in my notes, give us the Coles notes on that, but that is
Yeah.
so Gen X of me.
So Gen
So
X.
I asked, give me the
The
TLDR.
TLDR. Okay. It is called the GXP Index, the Generational Experience Index. What we're going to do is we would survey ideally every one of your employees, but it can be a subset. And it is looking at 5 themed topics that create a strong multi-generational workforce. So workplace values and priorities in terms of work ethic, motivation, and perceptions. Very different things across the generations. Cross-generational dynamics. So that's where your communications, your interactions, your friction points come into play. Knowledge sharing and growth. This is a big topic for especially legacy brands today. How do I get my knowledge transfer down? So how do I do that? What's the culture? What's learning and development? What's innovation? Retention and commitment for a lot of us in HR, critically important. Risk factors, tenure expectations, etc. And then work environment preferences. That's not the type of chair I'm sitting on. That's whether it's hybrid, remote, what are my hours, etc. So
Mhm.
those are the 5 themes. There are several micro levers underneath, so the questions are geared to that. We'll give you a score inside of each of the generations to say how well you're doing against those themes for the generations, and then
Mhm.
holistically for a multi-generational workforce. So then we can tell you you're doing great from culture perspective. Everybody loves your culture. They're bought in, they're bleeding whatever color your logo is, but you don't have the right technology, or you have too much technology and you really have this like large group of baby boomers that are still here that aren't adopting it, or whatever. So we can now granularly cherry pick the issues you may have for a really powerful multi-generational workforce and provide you with some recommendations on how to improve that. So that's the TLDR. There's lots more behind that. Happy to chat, but
That is amazing. What a great, so it's not only giving you like results, but really tips on like where do you need to focus? What are the
yes,
priorities for each generation within your
based
real.
on the levers we found in the white paper,
Mhm.
grouped them together so we can hopefully come to you and say, here are 3 areas tactically that you should be actioning today to improve your multi-generational workforce working
Mhm.
together.
That is amazing. All right, I have just popped I think this is showing up in the comments,
I see
hopefully.
it. Yeah.
A link to get the white paper, which is a great place to start, get all this research. And where else should people find you, Judi? What's the best way to find you?
Anytime, anytime, anywhere on LinkedIn, Judi Samuels, you can get me there. Judi Samuels at generationsxp.com. Happy to take emails and have a longer chat. And so I would love to. I could talk about this all day, as you guys can tell. So if you want further conversation, if you want to just see how you can use some of this on your own business, let me know, and happy to have that chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you for helping make work awesome for me this week, Judi. I feel
Awesome. Yeah,
you
it's so fun.
definitely challenged some of my preconceptions and given me a ton to think about. And hopefully for everyone else, I see people in the comments, lots to reflect on.
I'm so glad.
Uh, thank you. Thank you, everyone who joined us. Keep your questions coming. Connect with Judi, connect with
Anytime.
me, and make work awesome.
Sounds good. Thanks, Pam.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.